This is a podcast by the News Minute, and you are listening to South Central.
Hello and welcome to South Central, a News Minute podcast where we put the South at the center. I am Pooja Prasanna and I'm filling in for Dhanya Rajendran, who is in Kerala, not on a vacation, getting some work done, and she's also a little under the weather, so you can write to her and hope that she gets well soon. But joining me in the studio, keeping me in good spirits, is my colleague Anisha Sheth. She's our co-host today. She's made appearance on South Central quite a few times, both as a panelist and a co-host. Anisha, as you already know, is our Karnataka bureau chief. Anisha, thank you for filling in for me.
I was just going to say that you're filling in for Dhanya, I'm filling in for you. Okay, let's get on with it.
A quick reminder to all of you that, of course, we are available on YouTube if you are watching us there. But we are also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast and Acast. So I would request you to go on all of these platforms and like us there, because that way we can reach more people and this can be heard by more and more people. But a quick announcement before we start the show today. This is our birthday month, not ours, but the News Minute's birthday month. Feb is when we turn 12. We've finished 12 years of existence. At the beginning, when News Minute was founded, it was a response to a very Delhi-centric approach to news. Many people were fed up with how news was covered, especially as far as South is concerned. Even what space it would get, the story was always told from a Delhi prism. So the News Minute was started as a response to that, as a platform that will cover exclusively on the South. But I think over the last 12 years, we've evolved into many things. We've realized that it's not just the South that has gotten ignored, but a whole bunch of important issues are not covered enough or not covered the way it should be. We have focused on gender, we've focused on caste, we've focused on communal politics, any kind of division, and also on federalism, because the southern states need a voice to speak up to a very Delhi-centric national political scene. These have been some things that we've focused on, and we have become a strong voice. Even if I may say so myself, we have become a strong voice for all of these people. So if you have been a listener of the show, then you will know that South Central also was born out of this very ethos, this kind of journalism. So if you're somebody who keeps listening and keeps coming back, then you know what you have to do. You know the drill. If you're not yet a subscriber, this is a great time. Give us a birthday gift, become a subscriber. There is a QR code on your screen where Anisha was.
Yeah.
Scan the QR code, become a subscriber. But if you already are, it won't stop you from contributing. You can gift a subscription to anybody you like. It could be a family member, a friend, a colleague, somebody who's spreading misinformation and you think that person could use a subscription of the News Minute and newslaundry, a joint subscription. So make sure that you do your bit in supporting us, because that's the only way we can continue doing this kind of work. We don't take money from governments. We don't take money from corporates. As we keep reminding you, we don't even take ads. So we rely only on you, because we know that you won't let us down. Now, before I go to Anisha for headlines, another quick reminder. My colleague Harita Manav will not spare me if I don't remind you to read her latest work. She spent many weeks putting this story together. It's headlined Hindutva and the Mamangam Revival, rebranding a medieval Kerala festival as Kumbh Mela. There's something very curious that's happening in Kerala. In 2028, they plan to hold a massive Kumbh-style festival on the banks of Bharatapura. Tanya would have been very proud of my pronunciation. I hope she's not here. She will tell you in the next episode. But this story looks at how an ancient festival that was more political than religious was taken out of context, distorted, and is now being revived. She's spoken to many people on the ground. She visited the place 2 times, and she's spoken to historians and experts. She's put in a lot of work. So do support Harita Manav by reading this. It is behind a paywall, but it's worth your while. You can subscribe and read the story as well. Anisha, let's get on with the headlines.
So let's start with Tamil Nadu. A row that was recently in Karnataka is now happening in Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu school moves the Madras High Court over the state's objection to RSS camp. So a school in Kadalur district held a Seva Bharati camp. Seva Bharati is an RSS-linked organization. Okay, next we have Tamil Nadu BJP leader Annamalai steps down as in charge of 6 constituencies. So, former BJP president, Tamil Nadu BJP president K. Annamalai has requested reassignment. He was made in charge of 6 assembly constituencies for the upcoming election. And he has now stepped down from his duties, saying his father is unwell. Another row common to southern states, many of the southern states have the same grouse. The rise in the southern state share in devolution of funds provides no relief to Tamil Nadu. So the union budget was recently passed, and Tamil Nadu's share of the finances that devolved to the states was 4.079% in the 15th Finance Commission, but that went up to 4.097% now. And the rate of increase is only 0.44%. But the Tamil Nadu government, the political establishment in Tamil Nadu is saying that this is not enough.
Yeah, a lot of states have taken this up. There is a narrative being pushed that the southern states will get to gain from the 16th Finance Commission, particularly one section, because they've given 10% weightage to contribution to GDP. And by and large, the southern states and also, Maharashtra, Gujarat are states that do contribute quite significantly to the GDP. So the narrative was that this will increase the state's share in the vertical and horizontal devolution of taxes. But most of the southern states have kind of pushed back on this. In fact, Karnataka also, Hindu had a report too, saying that Karnataka is in fact set to lose 10,000 crores to 15,000 crores. That's what Siddaramaiah has alleged in the 16th Finance Commission. We are yet to go through the numbers and crunch it and see which way the thing falls. But most disturbing thing is every time they come for meetings, they do consultations with state governments. Eventually, they'll go and do what they want. And the union government, they wash the hands of saying that this is the recommendation of the Finance Commission. But in reality, the union government has a large say in this because they are the ones who set the terms of reference. The formula is set by the union government. The Finance Commission, by and large, works around that. So there will be a lot of answering on that front too.
Moving on to Karnataka next, Siddaramaiah counters helpless CM charge.
Says truth is often helpless before falsehood. A very convoluted kind of a headline. But this is Siddaramaiah responding to BJP's charge that he is a helpless chief minister now. He's not the same guy. So in response, he said, I'm the same Siddaramaiah and I will continue to be the same Siddaramaiah. But as we've discussed quite a few times in South Central itself, that his administration seems quite weakened compared to his earlier tenure between 2013 and 2018. There is a lot of talk about how he ceded some space to DK Shivkumar to hold peace so that he can continue being the chief minister. So in fact, we had a debate. You can go back and watch about how Siddaramaiah did break Devaraj's record of being the longest serving chief minister of Karnataka, but at what cost? Did he kind of compromise what he claimed, at least his stated position and ideology was? We have the link in the description. You can go and watch that.
Okay, so the next headline is again something where the state government is in battle with the union government. More accurately, Congress versus BJP. The Congress government tables Manrega, I can't pronounce that. That's
Manrega, sorry.
It is less of a mouthful than the current law, but okay. So Congress government tables Manrega resolution in Karnataka Assembly. BJP stages an all-night protest seeking resignation of Minister Timmapur.
So two big developments from Karnataka. But yes, the Karnataka government did table a resolution in favor of Manrega, and they have asked for VBG Ramji. That's what it said, VBG Ramji to be repealed. That's what the resolution says. This was a bone of contention between the governor of Karnataka and the state government. He'd refused to read at least 3 to 4 paragraphs where they criticized the current bill. But there is more to it than politics, because VBG Ramji is no longer an act like Manrega was, which ensured work for people. VBG Ramji, I think, will be a centrally sponsored scheme, which means that the state government can either avail it or they can just, in toto, they cannot say these are the terms we are okay with. So that is something that it's a hot potato for many states. As far as the second part of the headline is concerned, BJP, I remember reporting on this so many times when I was still more on the field. And I hated this deployment when they'd be even Congress had done that once. BJP has done it at least twice, where they'd stage an all-night protest in the assembly. And the scenes we'd get to see, the only silver lining of that deployment was that you'd get a lot of tic-tacs with all these people because they're going for the evening walks. I'm not kidding you. We've done tic-tacs with them, tic-tacs and TV's one-on-one interviews where they're going for night walks at 11:30, 12 in Vidhan Sauda. And we are also walking with them, though we didn't need that exercise at the time.
When you would rather be sleeping.
When I'd rather be sleeping at home. And then after 12 o'clock, slowly they start bringing their blankets and their pillows and somebody's changing it to things you do not want to see. But yeah, this is a very important thing that they're taking up. There has been a scam, an excise scam in Karnataka. For a while now, local channels, Kannada channels have been covering it. And the allegation is that Thimmapur, who is the excise minister, also gets a percentage. This is regarding the liquor license to run bars and pubs. And people are asking, what is Siddaramaia's cut in this bribe? We will be very soon putting out a detailed explainer on what the scam is. So yeah.
Okay, so we move on to Kerala next. The Venjaramodu mass murder accused's father approaches High Court against Malayalam film. So the case relates to this young man called Afan, who is accused of killing his family last year in February. And the trial is pending in court. Afan's father has sought a stay on the film as the trial could be affected by the release of the film. Okay, next, Kerala Assembly passes resolution against continuing neglect of state by centre. The Kerala Assembly recently passed a resolution against the union government saying it's continuing to neglect the state. Two key demands that the union government has ignored, according to the Kerala government, is the demand for an AIIMS and a high-speed rail corridor.
Yeah, this is actually something that they took it up right after the budget. And I remember when I was watching it, when Nirmala Sitharaman was announcing which are the states that'll get high-speed rail, I heard people shouting Kerala, Kerala in the background there. So they have taken this up after the union budget. But there's one very interesting dynamic here. In states like Tamil Nadu and partially in Karnataka, when opposition parties say that we're not getting enough projects and funds from the union government because BJP is not in power, that is worked in the favor of the opposition party. But my colleague Harita John was saying some sections now feel if we're not getting money in Kerala, if we're not getting money because BJP is not in power, maybe we should vote for BJP. So that has kind of backfired on them in some small sections is what I'm hearing. Interesting.
We go to Andhra Pradesh next. Pawan Kalyan contradicts SIT charge sheet, says animal fat is present in Tirupati laddus. So this was a controversy that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. The Janasena chief Pawan Kalyan's remarks are in contrast to the findings of the SIT which were listed in the charge sheet. So the charge sheet says conclusively that no cholesterol was present and has ruled out the possibility of animal fat.
So I want to plug, self-plug here. My Let Me Explain this week is on this Tirupati Laddu Rao. I had in the past as well, last year when this controversy broke out, had looked at what the lab reports actually say. This time we've done the exact same thing. We've gone through the charge sheet. Anjana Meenakshi, my colleague, has also written a copy. We'll put all the links. Do go and watch them. But another interesting Let Me Explain that we've done was about Pawan Kalyan's reincarnation as a Sanatani, how he kind of rebranded himself. That's, I think, relevant to read why he's been contradicting SIT that was constituted by his own government and has given a report now.
Okay, moving on to Telangana next. The poor asked to show documents during SIR while PM Modi's educational certificate yet to be revealed. That is Telangana Chief Minister CM Revant Reddy for you. The next headline we are going to be looking at today is No Non-Veg Food Near Temples. Telangana High Court orders state to frame 100-meter rule for restaurants.
Yeah, this is a bit bizarre. It started because a Telangana businessman wanted to start a restaurant near a school or something. And then he complained that the civic authorities are harassing him. He was selling meat along with other things. So the Telangana High Court, instead of asking civic authorities what their problem is, has now asked the state government to frame comprehensive policy within 4 weeks to regulate the sale and consumption of meat and non-vegetarian food within 100 meters of place of worship, educational institutions and hospitals. don't really know why. What is the problem if meat is sold around schools or even temples? What happens to temples where they actually sacrifice animals?
And that is besides the point. But this, I mean, I don't know the details, but this sounds like judicial overreach, no? I mean, like one person, one petition, and the High Court is going like over
but it reeks of Brahminical Puritan kind of
I mean, I think Karnataka is worse that way, no? Like every 2 months we have one day where meat is banned. Sale of meat is banned. My God.
Okay. We move on to the last headline for the day.
Last headline for the day, national headline we have now. Lok Sabha suspends 8 Congress MPs till end of the budget session over Naravane memoir row. Pooja, you want to take this?
So the suspended MPs are Amrinder Singh Raja, Waring, Manikam Tagore, several of them. Of course, leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi there were attempts to stop him from reading from that caravan piece as well, written by Sushant Singh. We hope to have him on South Central soon where we can discuss this. But some very interesting revelations were made in that book as well. We don't have the book and we don't have access to it. It has been censored.
The book hasn't been published
yet.
So it has been for a year now. The publishers have been sitting on the book, and that given all the ruckus around it, now I'm actually curious to find out what that man said.
That's the whole point, right? So one thing that has come out, apparently there are many damning allegations, but one thing is during India-China conflict,
I read the starting part of that story.
Exactly. They had to go and wait for 2.5 hours for permission to proceed. And the Prime Minister's office, or was it the Prime Minister himself, said that take whatever course.
Jo uchit samjho wo kare, or something like that.
For us house viewers,
no? Do what you think is appropriate, which is apparently not the call of the military, but of the democratically elected government, which is the Prime Minister.
Giving the political direction, is the administration's job. Okay, we move on to our first discussion. This is about the tariffs, and after 11 months of negotiation, it looks like there has been some sort of breakthrough. We don't know the details of it just yet, but in what now seems to be the new normal, Trump took to his social media and announced that he had a great conversation with his great friend, that is Prime Minister Modi, and he said that the tariff has been reduced to 18% on India. Now, this is the retaliatory tariff, which was 25. We don't have clarity from the Indian side on what happens to the punitive tariff, which was for buying Russian oil, which was also at 25%. So total was around 50%, as you probably know. But there are a lot of other questions that still need to be unpacked, because while Trump went on to claim that India promised to buy $500 billion worth of investments, which includes technology, agriculture, electronics, Indian side has been more muted. In fact, Piyush Goyal has gone on record to say that all the details will be made public only after the deal is signed and the technical details are done with. Let's unpack what this really means. Is this really a breakthrough? Is this an equal deal? Who got to actually benefit more, and what led to this after 11 months of negotiation? To talk about all this and more, we have two guests who I'm hoping will bring two different perspectives to this conversation. Smita Sharma, making her second appearance on South Central. Smita, you'd come during Operation Sindoor, perhaps, the first time around?
I think before that also, but clearly you guys are not inviting me enough. That's why we're losing count.
We will remedy this. But Smita, as you might already know, is a senior journalist. She has reported on foreign policy for more number of publications than I can even count. But she continues to appear on national and international news channels. She continues to write for Indian dailies as well. And her reporting on Kashmir conflict in 2010 won her the Ramnath Goenka Award. Also joining us is Mr. T.K. Arun. He's a Delhi-based journalist and a columnist. He writes extensively on a whole range of topics, but specifically on political economy. That's what he will be talking to us about today. And he's been the resident editor of the Economic Times in Delhi. Most interestingly, he's also been a technical advisor at the Kerala State Planning Board before he became a journalist. So very interesting intersection of expertise we have today. And of course, Smita, my first question to you is about how this announcement came in the first place. For the second time, a major announcement has been ceded to President Trump, like the Operation Sindoor ceasefire. He went to his social media and announced the details while Modi's tweet was more muted, like I said. What do you make out of this? Is this something we can read as far as the equation is concerned?
Well, hi. Thanks so much, Pooja, Anisha, and hello to Mr. Arun and to all your viewers. Good to be back always with you. I think, I always bring my skepticism into the room, and for which, of course, I get trolled a lot. But the fact is that the deal, on the face of it, while it does definitely look like it gives a breathing space to our manufacturing sector, to our exporters who have been under immense pressure, facing a 50% tariff, which was unsustainable, clearly. And, we do understand that the 25% on penalty for buying the discounted Russian oil is also now off, because India has indicated it, not so much clearly in words, but if you look at, the oil volumes and the barrels that we are buying and the kind of decline that has happened over the past 2-3 months, there is evidence to prove the same. So we are looking at 18% reciprocal tariff, which is any day a way, way welcome tariff from 50%. Having said that, I think there are several questions that are being asked of this deal, details of which are yet to be known, and why this process is being questioned. I'll of course add on in the in the comments moving forward also. But yes, to your specific question, Pooja, I think first of all we do need to recognize that we are dealing with somebody like a Donald Trump, who really isn't a believer of either institutions or processes. I think he somehow behaves like this imperial monarch who really thinks that people will have to align with him. He really pats his own back constantly, calls himself this great deal maker, keeps talking about art of the deal, his book. But though people who know his early businesses also know that he's actually been a bad businessman, because he's led so many casinos to losses, something that is not often heard of. So when you're dealing with Donald Trump, clearly the rules of the game do not apply. Many things change, whether it's friends, whether it's enemies. But that's said and done, I think for a democracy like India, the problem is that we do seem to be okay with a brazen disregard for our own parliamentary and institutional processes, which is being legitimized by the ruling party. And when you have Mr. Trump take to his social media post, Truth Social, or whether it is newly appointed Ambassador Gore, who's just come to Delhi, who's presented his credentials a few days ago, he informs us that Modi and Donald Trump have talked about it. And then Prime Minister Modi's tweet follows that a deal has been agreed upon, that too when Parliament is in session. There are definitely questions that must be asked of why protocols are not being followed. And at a time when Mr. Piyush Goyal's press conference, if you look at it yesterday evening, this deal was announced Monday late evening. After nearly 24 hours, Piyush Goyal is addressing the press. He's the Commerce Minister. And the words that he used in his statements, it is, these are final stages of negotiating. A joint statement along with details is to be issued. A final understanding is awaited. Full details are awaited. So if you are saying that while a political understanding was reached between Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump to close in on this agreement, but the terms of reference are not yet ready. This is not how things used to be done in the past. The terms of reference would be ready. The fine print would be out there. Cabinet would approve. If Parliament is in session, Parliament would be taken into confidence, and that's how things would be made public. So that entire process is gone. And the fact that if you're still saying that you're still awaiting a joint statement, despite being the chief negotiator from the Indian side, that even you are not aware of the details, which otherwise seem to be very specific claims being made by Team Trump, then why this early hype and celebration? Maybe even saw Prime Minister Modi being felicitated at the meeting of the National Democratic Alliance in Parliament yesterday. Why this early celebration? I'm not saying that the government would have compromised our interests. But wait, if you yourself are saying that even after being the Commerce Minister, you do not have the details of what the trade deal is finally going to look like. So I think there are these relevant questions that really need to be asked of what we are doing about our own democratic processes before blaming it only on Trump, because we seem to be okay at our government's level to be going ahead with all these irregularities.
Yeah, the fact that details have not yet been made public from the Indian side has raised questions, Mr. Arun, about whether we have conceded too much to get this, slash of tariffs. One thing that people are highlighting at this point is the fact that Trump has said that we will be buying 500 billion worth of investment. But we don't know if this is over 1 year, over 5 years, over 10 years. We have no idea. What does this mean for the Indian economy? Because our total per year imports is around $900 billion. So are we going to end up buying more than 50% of that from the US? And I know that the markets are rejoicing, but is there that much to rejoice? Do we know anything just yet?
So let us understand this is just a political statement. The details of the agreement have not been fleshed out by either side. So there are these large numbers being thrown around by Trump. He is a man who likes big numbers. His political base likes big numbers. Very similar to the situation with another leader that we are very familiar with. So these numbers are bandied about more to impress local voters than to refer to any agreements or actual facts. Like you said, we can't hardly import a $500 billion from the US and still honor our free trade agreements with other partners that we are signed up with, the UK, with the European Union. It's almost ready. We have with the East Asian countries, we have agreements. So obviously, we'll be trading with all these partners. If we just import $500 billion from the US today, then our trade will have to, our exports will have to jump tenfold to have some kind of balance with that. That's not possible. And I'm sure Trump will not allow that to happen. So this is just a number. It will take place over a fairly longish period of time, if at all. And the main importance, I would say, is in the political signal that the rift between the US and India is, for the time being, healed. That's all. So the markets are happy that money will not hold back from coming to India for political reasons. I think that is good. We have much at stake in our trade with the US. The entire export and services, IT-related services, software services, everything is concentrated in the US. The H-1B visa regime is very important to that IT industry. And so we wouldn't go out of our way to disrupt any normalization that is possible. And so we are playing it right. At the same time, it will be wrong to presume that the Indian political leadership has the freedom to compromise major interests of farmers or any other politically sensitive section in this country. They will not have. And they would not do it. Nobody is fond of political suicide, right? So we will manage to placate a very unpredictable kind of an ally by, say, making some nice noise. And as far as Russian oil is concerned, Russia is a very important partner for us in the global arena. Now, there are companies that keep track of oil outflow from Russia. They say that Russia continues to export oil. The moment the Trump administration announced sanctions on some major Russian oil companies, our oil companies stopped buying from those specified companies. But there are other companies around who can sell, and they move this oil over a dark fleet on the high sea, and they transfer oil from one tanker to another on the high seas. So oil will come to India, and their source bears no geographical indication. It might be from Russia or it may not be from Russia. We don't know. So long as Russia continues to export oil and India continues to receive oil, and if formally there is no record of India importing oil from Russia, nobody is particularly worse off. We can't really afford to alienate the Russians. They have been one solid strategic partner over the decades. Even today, some of our key equipment we source from Russia, the military equipment. We have joint manufacture with the Russians, the BrahMos missiles, and they have been the most willing to transfer technology to us. And India will not compromise all this just for some trade deal with the US. So there are some things where we will be less loud about, some things we will be more quiet about, and that's about all. So shouldn't jump to conclusions just because of a seeming surprising outcome. But let's wait for the actual details.
Yeah, I know that we have very little to go by today, but just for, if we were to take Mr. Trump's declaration that India has agreed to stop buying Russian oil, what does this mean, Mr. Arun, for the world economy as well? Because India was buying from Russia. Now we don't know who else will. Like you said, yes, it could be, it could go through dark channels. But do you think this could potentially spike up crude oil prices in the world?
I think this Russian oil thing is more or less an excuse for Trump. We are not the biggest buyer of Russian oil. That is China. Turkey buys Russian oil. Some European economies buy Russian oil. So, Trump is not raising any noise about that. So the issue is not really Russian oil and the role these sales play in financing the Ukraine war. This is just a pretext to attack India. I think the real issue was that India refused to endorse Trump's claim that he stopped the war between India and Pakistan, which he claimed was going to be a nuclear war. And we refused to nominate him for this Nobel Peace Prize. It is that peak more than anything else that prompted Trump to delay this whole thing so long.
Yeah.
Russian oil, I think, is only an excuse.
But Smita, that said, I see a lot of right-wing handles, including some prominent journalists, rejoicing that, Trump managed to get his way without any declarations of or endorsement of Nobel Peace Prize to Trump. And he just stood his ground and finally Trump had to blink. Two questions. One, what do you read? What led up to this finally, break in the negotiations? Did the deal with EU, what is now being called the mother of all deals, did that have something to do with this? And did we end up somewhere conceding some sovereignty as far as foreign policy is concerned? If what Trump is saying, if we did agree to stop buying oil from Russia, that means that somebody else is dictating our foreign policy. Is that also a matter of concern?
A couple of things here, Pooja. By and large, on the Russian oil, because you need to have a separate debate altogether. It's a very large subject. But what basically I can just tell is that so far, while India was buying oil from Russia, please remember, it wasn't like Russian oil was sanctioned. The sanctions were on certain Russian entities, and there was a cap that had been fixed, say, for instance, by the Europeans and by the so-called US-led West, which doesn't stand as a concept today because it's constantly sort of going through its own divisions and pulls. And India was buying oil from Russia well within that cap, which was placed. Now the problem is that US placed two of the Russian companies, including Rosneft, of course, on the sanctions list, and two of our major public refineries, which includes Reliance, who were buying this oil. For the longest time, they were actually refining it here because our refineries were more made for oil from Iran, for instance, or even from Venezuela. And both of these countries, we stopped buying oil from under pressure from Trump in his first administration between 2017 to 2021. Let's not forget that. So here, I really don't think, because Kremlin has given a statement where they have said that we have not been informed that India has stopped buying. Yes, I do agree with Mr. Arun that there are other ways that our companies can navigate through and circumvent those two essential entities that have been sanctioned. But the bigger problem arises that if you continue to buy from Russia, there will be the other aspects of your shipping insurance, your other banking challenges. And that makes it so much more problematic for us to continue with that Russian oil trade if those sanctions remain in place, rather than just making it a decision that we decided to stop buying oil from Russia so as to placate Trump. But having said that, I think, look, as we talk, I think Mr. Piyush Goyal has made a statement in Lok Sabha today where the highlights that I could catch seem very much similar to what he said in the press conference yesterday. So there are no new details that have emerged in that statement so far, even though it seems like he's taking Parliament into confidence finally. Whether India's sovereignty has been compromised or not, I do not know, in terms of, because I will have to wait for the final print. I will really have to see that which was the fresh gift that happened after 4 months of a stuck deal, of an impasse that we saw. Yes, the Americans had been wanting to push more chicken legs, say, for instance, more premium American bikes, for instance, poultry, dairy farming. These are all very, very sensitive areas. And I would like to believe that when Mr. Piyush Goyal comes on the record and says that the interests of 1.4 billion people of this country and all the sensitive sectors will be taken care of and protected, I would like to believe our government. But the problem is that if you look at the statements that are being put out by Team Trump, with the disclaimer that what Trump says must also be taken in with a pinch of salt, or with a buckets of salt rather, because he's known to lie through his teeth. He has lied through his teeth on India-Pakistan. He's lied through his teeth sitting with Imran Khan in White House in 2019 when he said that Modi has asked me to actually go in for mediation, which was a blatant lie, which is completely opposite to India's traditional position. But if you hear what Jamieson Greer has been saying, who's the US trade representative, to the media houses, or whether it's the agricultural secretary who put out that tweet yesterday saying that it's a historic deal and it will actually cash and pump into rural America and India's market will be open to American agricultural products. Mr. Greer, for instance, gives very specific details. He says there are agri products, dry fruits, vegetables, alcohol, spirit, all of these will face 0% tariff from India. The fact that, he's also mentioning chemicals, medical equipments that will see reduced tariffs, the industrial tariffs, which currently are almost around 13.5%, on American products, that will come down to 0%. So when you have one team come out with such specific details, and of course, try and trump up all of this bargaining as a huge grand success for President Trump. On the other hand, you have our team where Mr. Modi does put out one tweet saying that tariff has been reduced, but beyond that, he doesn't see anything. Sometimes it does feel like, while I do understand strategic ambiguity has been a foreign policy tool for India for too long, but you may have to find a way out to sound a little bit more convincing, instead of only trying to deny things on sources constantly. When you have the head of the state coming on the record constantly and making these tall claims and big claims, sometimes you may need a heavier weightlifting from the top leadership and maybe, making the statement. I can only hope that Prime Minister Modi comes on the floor of the parliament and makes a statement and clears all these doubts, because the joint statement as we speak, I don't see that coming through any day before a Friday or perhaps the next Monday also. So it's going to take some time. And anybody who knows Trump knows it very well, that he is going to milk this agreement for his domestic consumption by going out and talking about I've lost count of the number of times he's mentioned really that he's mediated a ceasefire. So this Trump is, this agreement is something, by the time he wakes up today, start keeping account of the number of times he'll continue to say that Indians have given in, Modi has given in, Modi is a dear friend, Modi has given in. Somewhere you need to find a balance and be able to stand up and clear these doubts that are there on people's mind, especially when you have the agri-sector people, you have farmers, whether it is the Bharatiya Kisan Union, Sanyukta Kisan Morcha, they may have political agendas or whatever, but they are issuing statements saying that India's agriculture sector seems to be getting compromised. So I think these doubts need to be clear, and we can only hope that Prime Minister Modi does that on the floor of the parliament.
But Smita, what do you make out of the reluctance? Why is the Indian side, is it a spin or is it crafting of a more measured statement? How do you read it? Why are they waiting?
In Indian foreign policy, while we have gone, the current regime takes a very negative view of non-alignment, calls it strategic autonomy. But some of the key foreign policy tools that we have seen over the past few years has been either the ostrich syndrome. You bury your head in the sand and you really wish that the problem goes away, or you are always in wait and watch mode. You just think that let the things pass away. But I think the key question here is also that how much can Trump be trusted, even if this deal has been agreed upon and will be inked? Because remember, Trump actually announced an agreement with the Europeans way ahead of our India-EU FTA. Despite that, he went after Europeans and threatened them with a 10% tariff on French wines, on cheese, on champagne, when the entire saga was developing over his obsession with Greenland. So we have to do, I think, a check and balance of how much can we depend on Trump. Yes, the India-EU FTA for sure has a lot of good things to it, and it has added as a strategic leverage for India, which must have been one of the points that has weighed in on Trump's mind, because he put out a very nasty post when that FTA was agreed upon in his quintessential Trump style. So that would have weighed in on him. But while there is a political understanding right now between Mr. Modi and Mr. Trump, the Indian foreign policy side, I think, really needs to up its strategic communication game. We do have S. Jaishankar in the United States meeting the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, currently, and he will be holding other meetings. The Indian side somewhere, I think, just keeps on wishing that let the storm pass away, and then maybe I will come and make a happy appearance.
These things haven't been done anyway. No deal has actually been finalized. The deal with the European Union was announced when Trump visited Scotland to visit his own golf course. The deal with South Korea was announced. It has still not been finalized. In fact, because the present South Korean leader was not even the president when that deal was struck, and the previous president had not finalized the deal through parliament, their legislature, it is still not being done, and Trump has threatened to levy tariffs on them. Vietnam, when they went home, they said that this is not the deal we struck. So Trump's announcements of deals are just political announcements. Nowhere has it been a fully fleshed out agreement. So that process will take time. It will not happen by the end of the week. It might take several months. And ultimately, you cannot hide if you decide to cut your tariff protection to domestic farmers too much. You cannot hide it beyond a point. It will be evident. And I'm sure our leaders have enough political sense to take this into account when they enter into negotiations with foreign countries. So I wouldn't worry too much about on that score.
Can I just also remind that, Trump, when he announced an agreement with Japan, and the text of the deal when it came out was different, in fact, from also some agreement which had been made on American rice exports to Japan. And that eventually led to the resignation of a Japanese prime minister. So the India-US relationship is very consequential. Trump's bluffs for sure needs to be called out. But Trump's bluffs can also be injurious to health, is what we need to remember if they are not called out properly.
I think we can all agree that Trump is not a great man of details. And for a minute, even if we were to keep his 500 billion number on a side, just for context, I think presently our imports stand somewhere around $91 billion from the US. But I want to focus on the second part of it, the sectors that he has mentioned, which are tech, electronics, which is also one of the largest exports that India does to the US. And most importantly, agriculture. How do you think this will, whatever the number is, whatever the final details are, the fact that India might allow these imports to come in at almost no tariffs, how do you think it will shake up our economy? There is one section, call them protectionist if you like. They feel that Indian goods can just not compete with American goods, if they come in at very, very low cost. Is that a legitimate fear, Mr. Arun, in your opinion?
So what is the American tech that we can import? I mean, obviously, we import all our software from the US. When every computer in this office has Microsoft Office running on it, right? That is imported from the US. Laptops might be Apple. I mean, they might be imported directly from China, but they are all American products. And as far as servers, etc. are concerned, many of them would naturally come from the US. So there will be nothing very dramatic about exporting tech from the US to India. And as for agricultural imports, there are some items for which there's a shortage in India. We are importing edible oil from around the world. Oil seeds are a major source of import, major drain on our foreign exchange reserves. So if soybean is made available to us on terms that favor us, why shouldn't we buy it from the US? Soybean has been blocked by China from the US. That's a negotiating tool they have. They're buying from Brazil instead. And Americans are desperate to sell their soybean somewhere. And if they offer it to India at a favorable rate, we should welcome it with both hands. Similarly, corn. We are stuck with this completely idiotic ethanol blending program. Half the ethanol, more than half, 55% of ethanol is derived from grain. Mostly corn. Last year, we allowed 5.2 million tons of rice to be fermented into ethanol. Can you imagine? You have subsidized water for irrigation, subsidized fertilizer, subsidized power to pump up the water. With all the subsidy, you grow grain and you procure it at fancy minimum support prices that keep going up month after month or year, season after season. And then you allow that to be fermented into ethanol. For what? What carbon footprint are we minimizing through ethanol blending? And when corn is diverted to ethanol, in Madhya Pradesh, people stop cultivating soybean and they switch to corn. And when the demand for corn goes up because of the demand for ethanol, the price of chicken feed goes up, the price of eggs go up, the price of chicken goes up. Whom does this help? And we keep pretending that we are doing some great climate favor by continuing to blend ethanol. So if we want to keep that pretense and continue with the ethanol blending program, if we import some corn from America, no big deal.
I think we need to just think about a couple of things. One is that, of course, America is a very, very important relationship for us. I mean, there's no doubt in saying that it is still the most important relationship for us by virtue of it being so broad-based. So it's a relationship we cannot damage. We cannot choose to completely, throw away. And it's something that we will have to, we are the smaller power there. And the bigger power always comes into the room with more negotiating leverage, which is without a doubt the case across the world. You don't have benevolent great powers who will actually allow the smaller powers or the middle powers to come in there into the negotiating room and have their way completely. That's not how power politics and geopolitics works. Having said that, I think for India, post the 91 liberalization of the economy under Dr. Manmohan Singh and P.V. Narasimha Rao, while our economy expanded over the last few decades, there has been a problem again of increased protectionism. And let's not forget that it's the very BJP who, when in opposition, was actually opposed to most of India's FTAs. It actually did not let the FTA happen with the European Union, say, for instance, for more than a decade when it was in opposition. And the Congress was trying to get ahead with this FTA. When Mr. Modi came into power, he cancelled off he scrapped off most of the bilateral trade agreements that India has. But I think with Trump coming back to power, it's been a rude jolt, not just for India, but for the world. Because the world order that we knew of, it did not exist. It stopped existing. As Mr. Carney said, that it was a delusion, speaking at Davos in the World Economic Forum. So you need to hedge your bets. While US is important, but the fact that Trump makes it so unpredictable and so undependable, you need to look for new markets. It's a reason that you've seen in the last year or two, India has really been on this drive to wrap up negotiations on trade agreements, whether it's with Australia, whether it's with UAE, whether it's with the UK. But of course, one has to do a reading. I'm told that even with the UAE FTA, our trade still remains at what it was 3 years prior to the signing of the agreement. So I'm not sure of everywhere that the FTA sort of outcomes have been really positive or favorable to us. But for sure, in the India-US trade, there was a serious component of a trade deficit that was favoring India, and it was a disadvantage for Trump. And if Trump comes to power, his domestic politics will trump his foreign policy. He's that kind of a person. So he has promised to make America great again for the MAGA wars. If he's saying that I'm going to use tariffs as this whipping lash to make sure that countries are forced to reduce their tariffs and to force to reduce this trade deficit, which has been disfavoring Americans. So he is doing what he thinks is in his national interest, which is why India will have to hedge its bets and has to go in and find alternative markets. I mean, with that 50% tariff imposed on us, and when we were facing stiff competition from the other markets, even for something like textile, apparel, where we were competing with either the Bangladeshis, the Vietnamese, the Indonesians, we had a very, very poor, sort of standing for the past few months when it came to our exports, because people were going to these alternate markets instead. So we have been looking to diversify. We have been looking to look for alternate markets. That's not going to happen overnight. But I think it's something that will now stay on moving forward. That even if India agrees to this free trade agreement, it's not the only agreement that India will bank upon anymore. It's a needed lesson. And there have been generational shifts in mindsets of people. For instance, auto parts, automobiles. Some years ago, if you said that India should actually go in for, reduction of duty to zero in terms of allowing American components and all to come into India, there would have been a massive furor. But I think there's an industry point of view also that has been changing over time, where they are agreeing to the fact that there are areas where India can and should open up, be a little reduced in its protectionist measures. But yes, in terms of the farming sector, I think that still remains very politically sensitive. And I have traveled extensively to farmlands into areas, whether it's Haryana, Punjab, those reports. Sorry for a self-plug. They're there on my YouTube.
Go
Smita
for
Sharma
it.
Journalist. You can go and watch.
Give out your YouTube.
Smita Sharma Journalist. It's very simple. Smita Sharma Journalist. So their farmers will tell you about their worries, because our biggest farmers in India cannot really match up to the technical resources, to the farmland resources that American small or medium farmers have. There is a huge gap there. Our small and medium farmers will actually be crushed, say, for instance, if American wheat starts to come in to India. They have genuine concerns there, which I think also needs to be addressed.
See, we really cannot segment our national security concerns from our trade negotiations. You must understand that our northern neighbor, China, uses Pakistan as a force multiplier. Their economy is 5 times India's size. Their R&D budget is some nearly 3% of the GDP, whereas India's is 0.65% of India's much smaller GDP, which means every year they spend 5 into 6, some 30 times the amount India spends on R&D. Their capacity in bringing in the latest technology of their own manufacture, their own invention into the armament they deploy against India directly or through Pakistan is enormous. To counter this, and particularly in the area of intelligence via satellites and other more sophisticated communication networks, we rely upon the US. So US support for us is crucial in ways way beyond trade, export of services, or export of some components or garments or anything. So we need to keep them on side when we deal with the rest of the world. This is a compulsion constraint that we have. So the real question to ask in Parliament on whether India's leadership is defending our strategic autonomy or not is, what are you doing to increase our actual expenditure on R&D, to increase our autonomous capability in the strategic areas? And that is actually where we need to ask tough questions. How can a country like India, which claims to be the fastest growing, fourth largest, all this kind of nonsense, spend 0.65% of GDP on R&D? The entire Indian R&D outlay in 2023, which is the figure that I have, was $37 billion, government and the private sector combined. And that is smaller than the amount spent by one company, Amazon, and R&D. How can India maintain strategic autonomy if we do this? There are 2,000 odd global capability centers in India where foreign companies employ Indian talent to develop intellectual property, to create new technological capabilities for their companies. Their IP will be owned by those companies. Indian talent is being used to do that. And this is a brain drain taking place right under our noses here in this country. Why doesn't this government employ this talent to develop technology for ourselves? We are giving billions, tens of billions of dollars of subsidy for foreign chip manufacturers come and set up in India. Why? If the US government says this level of sophistication in chips cannot be sold to India, even if that chip foundry is located in India, that company will not be able to sell it to India. What do we gain by it? Instead, we should be using the money to create our own.
No, be that as may, I take your point completely on how India needs to invest more on R&D. But the fact is that these investments also bring in jobs. They bring in investments that convert into tax money as well. So that is an important factor because all of these are labor-intensive sectors too, including textiles like you mentioned, agriculture. So it cannot be a complete shift overnight. We should have been prepared for this perhaps. That's an argument we can make, that we should have phased it out a little sooner. But now if we seed the space, yes, in terms of products, Indians might have more options, more affordable American products in the Indian market. But what happens to industries and the jobs that it was creating?
No, I'm not saying that we should throw open our economy to American goods without any let or hindrance. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the real question of autonomy is not how much leeway we are giving the Americans in their exports to India, but really how focused we are in building our own technological, industrial, military capability. On that, we are actually zero. And nobody's talking about it. And when it comes to jobs, we are in a very peculiar situation in world history where artificial intelligence is going into machines. It's no longer remaining at the level of software. It is getting physically embodied in robots. And these robots will do many jobs which previously machines could not do, which could not be automated. What is to prevent the diamond polishing industry being taken over by machines? The most finest, most exquisite jewelry still may be cut and polished by human hand. But the ordinary, run-of-the-mill kind of gems and jewelry might be done by machines. Are we gearing our workforce, a large number of people who depend on this particular industry, to make a transition or to use equipment? So these are the kind of questions we also need to look at, not just like what is happening in the level of trade.
So there's a question I would like to ask you both because, Mr. Arun, you mentioned ethanol, rice being used for ethanol and Smita, you mentioned agricultural subsidies in the US. Now, there's always been an allegation against the US that they adopt protectionist measures while forcing other smaller countries less powerful than themselves to open up their markets for American products. So, given the current situation, what we've seen in the last few months, how would you see this allegation against the US?
Of course, it's a completely valid allegation. They're completely unprincipled. They respect no rules. The rules-based order is gone. So they think might is right. If they can get away with whatever they do, they will do that. Only when the European Union threatened to fight back did Trump abandon Greenland, at least retreat for the time being. Only when other countries put up a fight against him will he actually chicken out. It will not happen on its own. So India will have to negotiate carefully, bearing in mind all the balancing we need to require vis-a-vis China, vis-a-vis Russia and other powers, and also maintaining the requirements of our industry to create jobs and employment growing, even while we prepare for a transition. So all this is a very complex chessboard. So we cannot allow Americans to, ramroll all kinds of concessions from us. We will not allow that. We cannot politically survive.
First of all, I think I don't think today any country really has a moral right of saying that हमने कभी कुछ गलत ही नहीं किया. It doesn't happen anywhere. And the more might you have, the less you care about being right. And especially when somebody like a Trump is in office, then every possible rules, every possible institution, legal process is thrown out of the windows completely. But it's also a shift in the way the world thinks. Today, morality, moral compass, these are words that are treated as dirty words. If you bring it up in a track 2 discussion or a think tank discussion, I'll be branded as somebody who's gone crazy and thinking about it. We celebrate transactionalism. We celebrate realism. So, every country will look out for their interests. This big brother syndrome that we complain about when it comes to the US, our neighbors complain about in India's context. Let's not forget, India did use economics as a strategic tool as recently as 2015 when it went in for an economic blockade of Nepal. Because we weren't happy with the way the constitution making process was going on. Mr. Jaishankar was then the foreign secretary. And in the process, we lost out the goodwill of an entire generation that went back to anti-India chimes. So there are problematic areas. There are areas where we are better than others. There are problems where we are not really living up to standards. I can only hold our country and my government and our citizens to better standards, not expecting the same from others. And just a quick clarification, Pooja, earlier when you had mentioned about the $500 billion, which I think is 45 lakh crore rupees, if I'm not mistaken, that is going to be spent according to sources over a period of 5 years. So you're spending $100 billion. But that also links into Mr. Arun's question. We are already buying so much. Our defense basket today, while Russia still remains the largest, exporter when it comes to our weapons, when it comes to our arms and ammunition, we have diversified. We buy a lot more weapon systems now from whether it's France, Israel, or the Americans itself. And they have 5th generation aircrafts. They have high technology aircrafts. The Russian aircrafts have faced criticism during the Ukraine war. So we need to prepare for better defense systems. But if we are constantly buying, that $100 billion is also no joke. If we are constantly buying products from others, what really happens to that call for Atmanirbharta, for self-reliance, for Make in India? Are those things getting a push or not? I think that really needs to be looked at with more, sort of a deeper insight and vision instead of just pure politics. So all I can hope for is that, again, I would repeat, the India-US relationship is a very consequential relationship of the 21st century. It's a two-way relationship. The Americans also need India a lot, even if Trump may not say so. So it's not a relationship that you can completely let go of. It's not a relationship that you have with a Pakistan or a Bangladesh or even with Canada, for instance, that actually, went into the doldrums for so long. The India-US relationship, given the size of the Indian diaspora, given the various sectors, it's a relationship which you haven't seen with the Russians despite all our years, because one of the biggest problems with Russia has always been the linguistic difference. With Russia, our relationship over the years has mostly been into defense component, into the strategic component or oil component. It hasn't really expanded in a way to people as we see with the US. When you talk about India, Russia, yes, there is the Raj Kapoor song, Mera Juta Hai Japani, Sar pe Lal Topi Rusi, Fir Bhi Dil Hai Hindustani. But that's a historic nostalgia thing. It's not a current thing. So that US relationship is very important, consequential and important for both partners. It needs to be protected also in terms of being a counterweight to China and aggressive China. But Donald Trump at the end of the day is a sheer businessman. He will throw anyone under the bus to look good to his MAGA words. He will make any kind of tall claims, false claims. So I can only hope that the Indian government looks out for the best interests, which I'm sure it will do, but also has a little bit more regard for processes and institutions and parliamentary debates within their own country, because this entire breakdown of trust in the parliamentary process between the government, between the opposition, the civil society contract breaking down, that to me is very problematic. That raises so many questions whether India has really conceded way more than it should have on deals like this.
If I could get your recommendation before we let you go.
I think for anybody interested in the way America works, there is this fantastic book called The Politics of Oil. And there's another book which is called The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I'm forgetting the authors of both, but I will send in the author's name. You can add it to the description box. And maybe, for the viewers who understand Hindi and English, please tune in. I have some fantastic conversations with Suhasini Heather, with Professor Muralidhar on my YouTube. You can watch them on my YouTube channel as well.
So just to conclude with whatever little details we have, can we expect a bit of a uptick as far as the economy is concerned? Because people are talking about how at 18%, we are slightly lower than our immediate rivals, even Bangladesh, Vietnam, China, Pakistan, of course, at 19%. Is this something that we can expect to translate into an uptick in the economy as well?
Marginal. I mean, it is better than being shut out of the US market. But let's understand that the tariffs haven't been reduced for all goods. Copper, steel, auto components, cars, all these still bear the levies under Section 238. What has been reduced are the levies that he levied in what he called reciprocal tariffs. But the special tariffs he levied under Section 238, they remain unchanged at 25%, 50%, 30%. And that will affect our ability to export a substantial part of what we used to export to the US, and that continues. So we need to completely reorient our trade, reorient our economic priorities, and basically strengthen our own economy internally. And I think investing in our own people is also important. We are all the time trying to export our way out of lack of growth momentum. But we should be able to sell stuff to our own people, right? For that, we need a basic change in our mindset. The working people are consumers. What is the wage cost for one company is a market for the rest of the economy. Every enterprise tries to minimize its wage cost, right? But what they pay out as wages represents purchasing power for the rest of the system. If everybody tries to minimize their wage cost, then you are collectively constricting the purchasing power of the entire population. So we need to understand that in the enlightened self-interest of our collective economy, it is good to pay people decent salaries, to give them leisure time so they can watch movies, they can hear songs, they can eat up, have leisure to travel. But they are all different aspects of the economy, right? So I think that is also a realization we need to have if you really want to grow fast as an economy.
So you're basically saying that India Inc. is holding the Indian economy back.
Yes, not only India Inc. Middle class people that we are, we bargain with the vegetable seller on the street for every little vegetable we buy. How much do you pay your maid or your driver? Do they pay them minimum wage? You don't. So it's a whole, question of ethics and enlightened self-interest. These two, when they merge, our economy will start growing much faster. And education. In the era of AI, unless you develop critical thinking as a basic faculty that runs across all young people, we will be left stranded. And are we trying to do that to improve our education system? I mean, all these are questions we must address.
Yeah. Important questions that we need to introspect and look at. For now, it looks like the tariff hurdle is okay only for the time being, given how mercurial Trump and his administration has been. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. But yes, more important questions on how we look at our imports, our exports, and like Mr. Arun said, strengthen our own economy, strengthen our workforce in a way that we are not so heavily dependent on other countries. We will move on to the next topic, but before that, let's get Mr. Arun's recommendation, please.
So for anybody who wants to understand America beyond Bollywood, I mean Hollywood and the daily news fed by CNN, there is a People's History of the United States, of America, People's History of America by Howard Zinn. It's a very fun book to read and it's not very expensive. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it on the paperback on Amazon. Howard Zinn, A People's History of the United States.
Okay, with that, we move on to our second discussion, which is more local, from US to Karnataka. For about 30 years now, student politics in student elections, particularly in Karnataka, has been banned. Now, the Congress government has formed a panel and they are looking at bringing it back. But in these 30 years, the face of our education has changed a great deal. There's a lot more privatization. But while there is one section that talks about how this will make it more democratic, when there are elections, then there are more student leaders, there is more ideological understanding in our colleges. There is also another section that talks about, when it was there, how violent it was, what were the issues. We're going to unpack all of that. And two people who've gone into this in great detail do join me. Anisha has written a piece on this, a very detailed piece. This kind of will serve as a curtain raiser for that piece. Hopefully it'll be out next week. And also joining us is our guest, Mr. Muralidhar PS. He's a professor in the Computer Science and Applications Department of Bangalore University. But most importantly, he's also the president of Bangalore University Teachers Council, which is the teachers union of BU. So he can give us a lot of perspectives. So just to start off, were you a student leader at any point?
No, I was not an elected student leader, but I did participate in student elections.
You did?
Yeah.
But as an apolitical candidate?
Not as a political candidate, but I was supporting student leaders, basically. I was not an elected student leader.
Right. So there is a lot of ambiguity on what was banned, what is being proposed to be lifted. Because I remember even in my college, which I did study in Bangalore, I had contested elections and we had one. There was a proper EVM and all of that. We were very excited. Anisha, take it from there. Just frame the context and give perspective on what exactly is being discussed in these meetings.
Yeah, so in December last year, the Congress president, D.K. Shivkumar, he formed a panel, but there was a build-up to that. For the previous 6 months at least, you have like small reports in the media appearing saying, NSUI is asking Rahul Gandhi to restart student elections and so on. And here in Karnataka also, several Congress politicians kept on making these little, hints. They kept dropping hints. And then now in December, you have this panel which has been formed by the party with only party leaders. It has no representation from anybody else. And so they are looking into whether or not elections can be started. If yes, how? But there are Congress leaders who are also aware that the Lingdo committee appointed by the Supreme Court in 2005 has already put all this together. It has done all the hard work of talking to students, and it was a very, very broad consultation. They had 5 public meetings across the country. They had responses from over 300 people, which is public universities, private universities, students, the student wings of political parties, just general members of the public. They had all these responses. And you go through the report and it is fantastic in the sense that they have a detailed understanding of what people are thinking and how people were thinking about and what people were thinking about when it comes to student elections, political violence, interference of political parties, what they think campaign expenditure should be, what the process of elections should be. All these things the Lingdo committee already goes into it, and there's a ready template which universities like JNU and Hyderabad University already follow, and they're very good actually. The elections there are done very well. They're managed almost, I think JNU elections are managed by the students, but HCU elections are managed by the faculty. But they still run very well. No violence, no lawlessness, no ruckus, nothing like that. So it is like a mini parliament or assembly or whatever you want to call it, right there on campus.
There have been sporadic reports of violence, but nothing at large scale. But violence is one thing that has gotten a lot of attention, right? In fact, people who say that it was right to ban elections also speak about violence and how there was there were dominant groups that kind of perpetuated violence on other groups. Is that something that you've come across as well?
No, I don't think so. I was a student in Bangalore University and I was a teacher in University of Hyderabad. I've seen elections in Bangalore University as well as elections in University of Hyderabad. I was there in University of Hyderabad for 3 years. And I think it was managed very well. And I do not think there was any problem during the elections or after elections. And of course, you can say that definitely it was politicized. You can't say that the students' elections are away from any political interferences. That's not true. But when I was in Bangalore University, there was a lot of political interference. And I think that's true of any other universities as well. But even in Bangalore University, when they conducted elections, I do not think there was any problem per se. There was no problem as such. There was no violence. And of course, people used to fight with each other. And that's a part of student life, I guess. And I don't think there was any large-scale violence pre-elections or during elections or post-elections. So I don't think violence can be one of the criteria to ban any of these elections. I don't think there was any violence at all.
Yeah. No, but before I come to you, it's just my 2 cents. This is like saying, I mean, we see violence even ahead of every election in most states, right? Particularly Kerala and West Bengal. I mean, democracy is messy. Yes, there shouldn't be violence. That is a law and order problem. But can you actually ban elections because of that?
Yeah.
Tell us what you think Karnataka kind of lost out on without having student elections in 30 years or roughly 30 years.
Well, one is what I'm seeing, now that I'm back reporting in the last 2 years, we've I don't know, I think once in 6 months we get calls from students studying in private colleges in Bangalore, asking for help about, their colleges are horribly authoritarian. And at one point, female students of a college reached out and said that the security guards are being asked to make us raise our hands because they have to check the length of our tops to see if they're crop tops. I mean, like, that's terrible. Like, how can you make one person do that to another? I mean, it's yeah. But finally, ultimately, they all get scared and they back out because they simply cannot take on the management. They have no support. The teachers have way too much power. The university has way too much power over their attendance, their academic records, assignments, internal marks, whatever you name it, right? So they have zero bargaining power. And the colleges will do whatever they want. And like I was talking to some of our interns the other day and I realized, and they were saying that their college fees is 85,000 a year.
That's actually quite less if you look at school fees and even other colleges.
Agreed. When you compare it to school fees, like even kindergarten fees are like 1 lakh and so on. But it is an outrageous amount for anybody to afford. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, if we think this is low, imagine like some medical seats in private colleges go up to crores of rupees, which is an insane amount. And there is no way to push back against any of this because nobody is listening to students. students are talking. It's not that they're not talking. And I think Bangalore University, you also know how much your students push back against, high-handedness of the authorities. Some months ago, Dalit professors at BU were alleging that the, vice chancellor is discriminating against them. And the students also took a political stand and they said, okay, no, we are going to support, our teachers. So that can happen for some reason in public universities. Bangalore University is one, Mysore University is another one. And, some of Bangalore University students say that there is an informal network among the postgraduate and research scholars of some around 6 or 7 public universities in the state. And they have these informal associations and they do keep challenging the university authorities when, when scholarships don't arrive or when scholarships suddenly stop or if they take any other kind of decision which adversely affects student interests. So they're able to speak up for themselves. And you simply don't see that happening with private colleges at all. I mean,
but I think the problem is that those voices of opposition and pushback are quite scattered, so it's easier to dismiss them. But if they come from a union, a legitimately elected student union, is it too idealistic to think that that will be a counterbalance, so to speak, to these managements, and especially in private sector, not just BU but also private sector? Is that too idealistic to think that?
I think there are two things here. If you look at JNU and University of Hyderabad, they are central universities and they're not affiliating universities. But Bangalore University is an affiliating university. Now, even when Bangalore University had elections, it had elections only within the university itself. So it did not have student representation outside the university, meaning that we did not have any representation from affiliated colleges. So therefore, affiliated college elections was never there. Right. So Bangalore University per se, it's because it's an affiliating university. So there are 300 colleges which are affiliated to Bangalore University. So there are around 2 lakh students who are studying in Bangalore University. Of course, they are studying from various colleges of Bangalore University. But whenever we had elections to students' unions, those elections were conducted within the university itself. So we have around 50 departments and 50 department students used to participate in these elections. So therefore, the private institutes students never had any representation at all. Now, if you are saying that, yes, of course, you are quite right in saying that there is no representation from student side, especially from affiliated college side. But I think we can conduct it in 2 manners. One, representation for all the students of affiliated colleges, and another representation for students' union within Bangalore University itself, like JNU or University of Hyderabad. So that should be the criteria, and I do feel that there should be students' representation. Why I say that there should be students' representation is because Karnataka State's University Act clearly says that there should be students' representation in academic council. But if you see the procedure of drawing student members to academic council, of course, the university has its own rules. But if a student themselves elect presidents or office bearers or whoever it is, so if these office bearers, if they become academic council members, and I strongly feel that there is an academic student representation. So the students are electing their own leaders, and then those leaders will actually be part of academic council, which is a highest academic decision-making body in any universities in Karnataka.
And they will have a say in how things are run in the university.
Absolutely. So this academic council discuss every matters pertaining to academics. Either it could be syllabus framing, or it could be decisions on syllabus and whatever the changes which we are trying to make with the syllabus, either to do with credits or whatever it is. So in that sense, I think if students are there, are genuine students, meaning to say that the elected students, if they are there as part of academic council, then it will have more student representation, and and that will actually really give some kind of voice to students. And you're quite right in saying that some college students, if they want to, affiliated college students, if they want to come and then get their things done in universities, so they do not have any representation. So they just have to meet some officials and then get the things done for themselves. Of course, Bangalore University definitely has, as you rightly pointed out, unofficial associations. So they unofficially elect student leaders. So it is not actually registered association. So what we feel is that there should be a registered association. So if you have a registered association, then there are a set of rules. So you have to conduct GBM twice a year. You have to submit your accounts to university or to registrars of association or whatever it is. So if there can be a registered union, and there's a registered association, and like in the case of JNU, if students wants to conduct elections on their own, they can do that. Otherwise, like University of Hyderabad, teachers can definitely help. But in Bangalore University, teachers used to help students in conducting elections, because teachers used to be the officiating or officers who used to conduct elections. So that's not a problem for us. We can help, our teachers can help students in electing their representatives.
So just for the sake of clarity, both for me and our audience, in the last 30 years since the elections were banned, students were allowed to contest and win elections, but not as any political entity. Not as a student wing of any political entity, be it SFI or NSUI or ABVP. But they were allowed to be part of these organizations individually, in their individual capacity. Plus, the biggest factor is the fact that these unions were not registered, which means that there was no accountability. They could function as they wanted. And also, they didn't have a legitimate say in how things were run. That is subjective to the understanding they have with the management and the union.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
I think so, yeah.
By and large?
No, I think, it registered, they were not registered. Some had registered.
Now,
that's what I'm trying to say. From the last 30 years.
Okay, sorry.
From the last 30 years. So it's all unofficial. No, they were, I'm talking only about Bangalore University. Maybe perhaps it's also true with other state universities in Karnataka as well. So these unions are unofficial unions. It's not that they conducted elections. It's somebody, some ex used to, they used to form a group, and then they themselves used to have their own office bearers. So elections were not conducted either by the university or by the students themselves. But unofficially, they actually had a gathering, sometimes. So they used to get together, and then they used to elect their office bearers. And these office bearers in turn used to come to the administration, and then they would say that they are the students' representatives. But there was nothing official about all these elections, though sometimes they had their own internal elections, but you can't say those elections as official elections. They were not official elections. So in that sense, from the point of view of Bangalore University administration, if I may say so, there were no official unions from the past 30 years. But of course, there were pressure groups. So there were pressure groups, and then they did do some good things, some of the unions, because I think they used to raise their voice, not necessarily about the university's issues, but in general about social issues also. I think Bangalore University and Mysore University and some other universities, student leaders used to voice their opinion in general.
That's actually the last thing I want to touch upon before we wrap up the conversation about what it did. We spoke about how they couldn't push back as much against the management. But
Can I just
ideologically,
make a quick point here? So there was another system of representation in the old law, the 1976 Karnataka State Universities Act, which is called, well, basically it functions like how the MLC elections functions, right? So Bangalore University used to have something called a Senate. That Senate body has now been scrapped since 2000. But the Senate had around 50 people in it, government officials, bureaucrats, university officials. But it also had a system of graduates who elected graduates and sent them to the Senate to speak on behalf of the students. So that system was a very interesting one because you had also principals of affiliated colleges whom the college principals themselves elected and sent to the Senate. Then there are other professors of various departments. They would elect their representative and send them to the Senate. So this is a very democratic and very diverse body of people who would go to the Senate and decide on academic affairs. And I spoke to somebody who contested one of these graduate elections, and she said that, they had enough clout to even reverse decisions taken by the university, because it is not necessary that it is only the students who will speak up for the students. There were a lot of other members who were part of the Senate who would also take the side of the students and do what is best for the university and for the students. So that kind of system you can't imagine today. I don't know. I mean, yeah.
But before we wrap up, there's another. You spoke about what kind of social issues they take up, and that did continue. I want to look at what damage was done in the ideological forming of students in the lack of elections. Do you think that, say, something like a hijab row that you saw in 2022 in Karnataka, where young Muslim women were targeted for wearing hijab, and in protest, right-wing students, particularly from the ABVP, donned saffron shawls as a form of protest. And it spread from coastal Karnataka to, Hassan, Chikmagalur, even Mandya, right? And of course, parts of Bengaluru. Do you think something like this could have been prevented, could have been handled differently if there was student politics elections in Karnataka?
Maybe, I think, maybe because I think if in such cases, let's assume that university officials call for a meeting of all the student leaders and pan Karnataka. I mean, if let's assume that if the government had called for a meeting of all the student leaders, because I think these students leaders will definitely have a say, right? So what if they had taken a decision among themselves, among all the student leaders? So probably I think these kinds of things could have been prevented. Now, because I think they will also be very mature in taking such decisions. Maybe I think lack of student leadership would have caused some such issue. Because I think without a leader, I think each one of them would have had their own opinion or ideological say or whatever it is. Yeah, I think you're right. Probably, I think such things could have been managed better if they had a student leadership, student leaders, or student office bearers. So, meeting of all the student leaders, I think can actually
it could have helped.
It could have helped better the situation.
So, closing thoughts, Anisha?
Closing thoughts. The elephant in the room. Private colleges. If you go by the numbers, you're looking at 70% of, 70% I think of your student body roughly is studying in private colleges affiliated to state-run universities. And right now the Congress, the panel at least seems to be thinking that they will introduce elections in state-run universities first. And then I think it will probably die out there if at all they do manage to introduce student elections there. But yeah, this is, and let's not forget that Mr. D.K. Shivkumar, who set this ball rolling himself.
Is a student leader, yeah?
Student leader, yes, but he also is connected to, can we say that?
Of course you can. He does, he's associated with several private colleges. So yeah.
Yeah.
So, which part of him will weigh, the student leader or the businessman, remains to be seen.
But yeah, he's not the only politician to be associated with or running, colleges, right? And if you see, right now we're only looking at private colleges, right? But if you expand it, you're looking at your entire education system, right from kindergarten, is largely controlled and run by private people and associations, and they are a very, very powerful lobby. There's too much money in it, right? So then let's see what wins out in this. I mean, if anything comes of it at all, we don't know yet.
On that note, very optimistic.
Very
A very
optimistic.
optimistic
I
note.
hope there are student elections.
Yeah. But our bureau, particularly Anisha, will keep track of what the panel comes up with, what their final decision is. But don't forget to read Anisha's piece. It will be published on the News Minute, hopefully by next week once the edits are finalized. Do write to us on what you want us to take up. You know the email ID, southcentral@thenewsminute.com. And before we let go of Professor Muralidhar, your recommendation for the week, sir.
I recommend Crime Invited, a novel which is written by Chitti Babuji. It's about health and other issues. And I think it's a very socially apt book. I request all of you to kindly read that book.
Anisha, what's yours?
Okay, I remembered one.
Yeah, Anisha, by the way, has forgotten at least 5 times. She says, I forget, I remembered. Let's go before you forget again.
So the book I would like to recommend is called The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents. It is by Terry Pratchett, and it's a very interesting book about mice and cats who can suddenly think. So now they have thoughts. And then it makes them different from other rats and other cats. And what happens to them is the question. So it's fun.
Nice.
Oh, and there is one Pied Piper also over there. And, it's a very interesting take on the,
So only some of them can
rat
think,
plague
the others
and-
can't.
Yeah, only some of them can think. Yeah, so it's interesting.
Interesting. Yes, definitely. Mine are fairly less interesting from that sense, less creative thinking. I mean, the world we live in, we can't think too creatively now.
That's why you need Terry Pratchett and educated rodents.
Sure. My first is a New Yorker piece. It's called How the Murdoch Family Built an Empire and Remade the News. Second one is this piece by on the Atlantic. Trump is doubling down on all the wrong things. Very relevant to the first conversation that we had. Third one is not a very long one, but again a New Yorker piece. I have been still mourning the passing away of Catherine O'Hara. Many of us know her as Moira. Some of us know us as the mother in the Home Alone.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Those who are old enough to have watched it. But this is called Catherine O'Hara's Unforgettable Delivery. Do read it. And I've been watching some of her speeches, everything that she stood for, the sisterhood, the people who are speaking up after her passing away is just so moving. So that's it for this week. The recommendations are done. Before we wrap up and hope that Tanya is back next week, again, a reminder to become a subscriber of the News Minute and News Laundry. And also, if you're a subscriber, you can contribute to a reporting fund so that all of us can go on the field much more, bring you ground reports, especially with elections in 2 southern states, very important ones in Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much to our producer, Bhuvan Malik, our production assistant, Ajay, our editor, Jasim Ali, Sukanya Shaji, who listens to the show, the unedited version, patiently and gives a suggestion, and Yana Choksi, who does the social media for us.